An article in The Guardian caught my eye the other day. Now, although The Guardian isn't exactly essential reading for me, I still like to give it a go now and then, a bit like a junior sports coach who might see potential in a wimpy kid. And despite misgivings based on a history of cringe-inducing clangers out on the field, lets them have a chance before being inevitably disappointed and relegating the kid back to the bench. In this case, a writer, Stuart Jeffries, had done a review of an upcoming documentary on the Rolling Stones. Jagger starts the film, Jeffries writes, telling us how he despises the exact rock mythology this cliché-ridden show indulges in. Worse still, he says, it fails to ask difficult questions about his band's problematic past. Now, when a writer from The Guardian states at the outset of an article that it's time to address someone or something's problematic past, you can be assured, as surely as night follows day, that you're in store for a Prissy session of wrist-slapping about how someone or something fails to meet the acceptable standards and sensitivities of a more enlightened age. You also know that your morning is about to be ruined. Jeffries gravitates early on to a connection with the opaque cultural theory that had reached its self-aggrandizing peak during the 60s and 70s, and which many undergraduates come to suspect are posers with little to say. Or, to paraphrase Oscar Wilde, they had nothing to say and said it. Jagger, in his pomp, Jeffries writes, not only looked good, but typified the gender-fluid carnivalesque liberation of dressing up championed by queer theorists. He then quotes someone in the documentary. He projects the wild animal that's in all of us, says record producer Don Was. We celebrate the true nature of the human being when we look at Mick Jagger. Do we? Jeffries then ponders. I'm not so sure. It sounds, he says, just like problematically heteronormative essentialism. Now, if you're anything like me, problematically heteronormative essentialism might not be the first phrase that comes to mind or first association you have with the Rolling Stones, in any context, reviews, commentary, or otherwise. In fact, I'd wager for 99% of the human species, such a formulation is draining, both in its unrelatability and its strident imposition of modern-day identity politics into an area, or really, a band, which transcends all that shite. Jeffries goes to great pains to tell us Mick Jagger would disdain the kind of documentary being made for going too much into the myth and being cliché-ridden. But he lacks the nous to recognize that his own review and its identity politics would also be disdained, as the antithesis of the bohemian, sexual, Dionysian, blues-laden beast that is the Rolling Stones. The Stones are to music what the Queen is to statecraft, a rarefied air above everything else. And if the likes of Jeffries smash their way into this last citadel, then we're all done for. If you think I'm bloviating as badly as him, consider this next paragraph. In 2022, we need a deeper dive than this, he says. The Rolling Stones are ripe for critical reappraisal. The band surely know that time is up for their sexist and racist excesses, not least because only last year they wisely withdrew their 1971 hit Brown Sugar from the US tour setlist. Jeffries might well be referring to another Guardian article, which leads with, the Rolling Stones' decision to drop the song Brown Sugar from the setlist of their US tour has been hailed as a victory. By who, the Guardian doesn't actually say. With previous performances of the hit labelled insensitive and a prime example of entitlement, again in ambiguous quotation marks. Critics have said the 1971 track, the band's second most played song on their tour after Jumping Jack Flash, contains, quote, some of the most stunningly crude and offensive lyrics that have ever been written, again with no attribution, and that it is gross, sexist, and stunningly offensive towards black women. As always, with The Guardian, you read on past the prim about-timeness and peak and see the more blasé reality. The article states, guitarist Keith Richards said he was confused by the backlash it had received over time. I'm trying to figure out with the sisters quite where the beef is, he said. Didn't they understand this was a song about the horrors of slavery? But they're trying to bury it. Lead singer Mick Jagger said, we've played Brown Sugar every night since 1970. So sometimes you think, we'll take that one out for now and see how it goes. We might put it back in. Returning to Jeffries' article, he wonders, you have to wonder why it took so long. After this, Jeffrey sums up with a truly astonishing analogy. It's as if the song were by not Jagger and Richards, but the songwriting duo Edward Colston and Harvey Weinstein. Again, if you're anything like me, that's not the first figurative songwriting combo that springs to mind when you think of the song. As it happens, the song isn't condoning anything, just as sympathy for the devil isn't actually an appeal to have genuine sympathy for Lucifer. Jeffries and other writers are perfectly entitled to state we need to have a conversation about whomever. The rest of us are equally entitled to not partake in such conversations, and to instead codify aspects of the past that are above pernicious and priggish categorization as problematic. Jeffries might want us to change our perspectives, but you can't always get what you want.